Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Live at the Waterhole. We're first up, once again, we're at the Tau Lodge in the Madikwe Game Reserve of the Northwest Province of South Africa. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and what does the bush hold in store for us today? Well, once again, you'll have to sit back, relax, and watch as the animals come down to quench their thirst and cool off. And as per usual, please don't forget that this is a live and interactive experience, so we'd love for you to jump on board with us and send us through your questions and your comments. You can do that by going on the Wild Earth website and registering. You can also join the conversation on X, formerly known as Twitter, using the hashtag WildEarth as it appears on your screen. What is it that you'd like to see? What would you like to chat about? Whatever it is, wildlife related, send it on through. You can see a couple of bull elephants there, just calmly relaxing, maybe throwing a bit of dust around. Some blue wildebeest behind them. And, of course, the resident waterfowl as per usual. Looks like there might be some zebra off in the distance on the right there as well. You can hear the little blue waxbills and the chin-spot batis. Looks like the spur-winged goose hasn't gone anywhere and it's hanging with the Egyptian geese. It's like a couple of big old elephants, these two, especially this one in front, throwing the dust around. Now, a couple of comments already coming through. One from Casper saying, good morning all from a 31 Fahrenheit, Milwaukee. Hi, Ralph. How's it, Casper? And I hope you got some nice warm clothes on. That sounds terrible. But anyway, there's another one from Kels fam saying, hi, Ralph. Thanks for being our guide and going live. Absolute pleasure, Kels, and nice of you to join us. Looks like a lovely day here in the Madikwe Game Reserve. Just on the Botswanan border, nice and hot, but we are in autumn, so it might be cooling down a little bit. It was very similar yesterday. There were a few elephants around, but lots of wildebeest and zebra. A couple of warthogs as well. This elephant doesn't seem to be doing much with this dust except blowing it around, almost like he's smoking a pipe. Oh, there we go, getting it in behind his ears. This big old chap just sauntering on over. I think he's thinking about coming for a drink. Maybe a bit of splash as well. So Sugar Bits was asking, was there any baby crocs that hatched? Not to our knowledge, Sugar Bits. It seems like they've been unsuccessful once again, unless we just haven't noticed. But we'll keep our eye out for any little croclets. So there's a question from Andrew, a nice question. Do the ellie wrinkles get worse as they age, like humans do? And I found a nice blog on the Londolozi website, and they're speaking of exactly this topic. Do elephants wrinkle with age? No one can argue that watching a herd of elephants, or even just one lone bull, is fascinating, not only in terms of observing their behavior, but also admiring their unique physical features. From their sheer enormity in size, the dexterity of their trunks, complexity of their skin, the stunning long eyelashes, and the list just goes on. So while watching these majestic giants, I often ponder over these characteristics. And then the age-old question, do elephants wrinkle with age? Seems like a simple question, since elephants are born with wrinkles. They would surely just get more wrinkles with age. But there's more to this than initially meets the eye. To start off, you have to consider why elephants have so many wrinkly cracks and crevices covering their body in the first place. And this is a mechanism of thermoregulation, or controlling one's body temperature. That is often discussed in the heat of summer when watching elephants throw water and mud as well as dust all over themselves. So an elephant's intricate network of crevices enables up to 10 times more moisture to be trapped against their body for longer than if their skin was smooth, and in the process aids in cooling themselves down. This is a vital adaptation to elephants. Unlike most mammals, elephants do not have sweat glands, except for a few situated in their feet, which don't help much for dissipating heat. Not only does the act of throwing mud over themselves, or mud bathing, also enable moisture to be trapped in the wrinkles, it also adds a layer of protection from the sun and wards off unwanted ectoparasites as well. So the next step before you can determine if an elephant wrinkles with age is determining how old the elephant actually is. This is no easy task unless the individual elephant has been seen regularly from birth. And with 3.5 million hectares for elephants to roam from Londolozi and throughout the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, there's seldom the same herd seen regularly. Although we do see a lot of the same elephants here at Madikwe. So when you have to accept that animals will never wrinkle as much as humans do because we live a relatively long life compared to other species, elephants with one of the longest lifespans usually reach around 60 years. As humans, we also don't have hair or fur covering our bodies that will protect our skin from the sun as much as elephants do, and certainly don't throw mud on ourselves as often as they do either. Simply put, we have more time to get wrinkly. What humans and elephants do have in common is that we both continuously develop new skin cells. But unlike humans who shed dead skin cells, elephants' dead skin cells build up over time. So their skin then thickens over time as well, eventually exerting enough pressure to generate cracks, which then bend their outer layer of skin, creating more sags and folds and increasing the network of wrinkles that helps them stay cool and starts to give away their age. So the next time you see a wrinkly elephant and perhaps wonder the same thing as we have here, hopefully this little bit of information has helped you understand the intricacies of an elephant's skin as something that makes them such special animals. So the short answer to your question is, Andrew, yes, they do continue to wrinkle as they age and as the skin cells reproduce until the day that they die. So a nice comment coming through from Kedar saying, hey, this is Kedar here from India. Wanted to know the differences between the African elephant and the Indian ones. Are they temperamentally different too? Welcome aboard, Kedar, all the way from India. And the main differences between the Asian and African elephants is that African elephants, as you can see here, have a very rounded head. And the Asian elephants have a twin domed head. So it's quite different looking in terms of the skull. But with the Asian elephant, this means that there's a divot line running up the head itself. You can also look at the tusks. In African elephants, both the male and the female have tusks, but only the male Asian elephants will grow them. And then if you look at the overall features, African elephants are larger than the Asian elephants, fully grown. And the Asian elephants also quite a lot smaller than the African elephants. And if you look at the African elephants' ears when they're outstretched, especially when they're trying to make themselves look bigger, It is almost exactly the same as the continent of Africa. That's what I always think of when I see an elephant's ear when they're outstretched. Temperamentally, African elephants, I would say, are probably a lot more aggressive. Not to say that Asian elephants can't be aggressive, and they are sometimes, but temperamentally, I would say that the African elephants are a little bit more charged. They've never been sort of habituated and worked like the Asian elephants, and this has taken centuries, obviously. So in the recent past, there has been sort of enough training to enable elephant-back safaris and so on, but this has been banned in even more recent times. But that's about as close as they've got to working elephants in Africa. In the history, there's never been sort of a taming of them to be able to work them, so they've always been regarded in Africa as a dangerous animal that you need to keep away from, or out of its way at the very least. And then African Sunset was asking, do South African farmers use beehive fences the same as Kenya is doing? Not quite to the same degree, African Sunset, but there has been some use of beehives and bees in particular to keep elephants, or to try and manipulate them in certain circumstances. I know for a fact I worked on a private game reserve in the Eastern Cape, and being in the thicket biome, there's not a lot of big trees down in this part of the country. So when there are, especially the likes of milkwoods and scotias or the boerbeens, the sort of landowners try to protect them. And if they've got elephants on their property, it's quite a difficult thing to do. So what they actually found on this particular reserve that I was working on, they started to farm with bees, but they were putting the beehives around these big trees to stop the elephants from pushing them over. And they actually found the magical number. If they put 3 beehives, the elephants would still push the tree over, because the circle wasn't complete and it wasn't enough. But if they put 4, that would stop the elephants from doing it, and they wouldn't touch those trees where they were. So it's 4 beehives to keep the elephants away from a particular tree. But in general, in South Africa, we don't have free roaming elephants. They're all in protected areas with game fences. So you don't really have elephants getting out into farmlands as you do have in the likes of Kenya, where the farmlands do intersect with the conservation areas, and the elephants are able to move between those farmlands and so on. So that's where it's quite important for them to have to do this, and they do have a lot more elephant-human conflict in those areas. So they've got to work on it a bit more than we do, and but at least they've got free roaming elephants. With us, they're unfortunately just enclosed within the protected areas. Here we can see a couple of red-billed teals, a couple of black-winged stilts just moving in front of them, and some mulpitta just behind that little dried out plant there with the seed capsules. Seems like there's not much wind around again today. Nice calm winter's afternoon. I say winter, although we are sort of in autumn. In South Africa and in these parts, we don't have really big autumns and spring. They're almost just like a month each. And so we almost just about have summer, a little bit of the other two, and then straight into winter. See the Egyptian geese there, just enjoying a graze. The black-winged stilts are also busy. A couple of blacksmith lapwings. The spur-winged goose seems to be having a snooze, along with the red-billed teals. All right, so a lovely start here at the Tau Lodge in the Madikwe Game Reserve, but I think it's time to change of place and let's head up to East Africa, Kenya and Oldonyo, where we have a massive bull elephant. I think this is our chap that is termed 1 ton. Those tusks almost reaching the ground. What a fantastic sight this is. He is an absolute beast. What a privilege that he's come down just in time for the show. He's been avoiding me, and he hasn't really been on the show. I've seen him outside of the show, but this is the first good view I've got of him. Now, Mercedes Bean was asking, at what age does an elephant get their tusks? So Mercedes Bean, it's anywhere between 2 and 3 years of age that you'll start to just see the starts of their little tusks poking through. So anywhere from 2 years up till about 3 years. Some do come a little bit later, but it's normally around 2 years or so. I am in absolute awe of this fellow. You can hear a rattling testicular calling, serenading this big bull. It's just amazing how big these tusks are. There's another nice question from Sugar Bits asking, where on the face of the elephant does the trunk truly begin? So to answer this question, I'll just go through exactly how the trunk is formed, which is by a combination of the nose, the upper lip, and certain facial muscles as well. So it's almost just below the eyes in the middle there. And there's no bones in the trunk at all. And the two nostril tubes are surrounded by approximately 60,000 muscle units. And they're divided into 6 major muscle groups, which are responsible for the dexterity and fine movement of the trunk, as well as its strength as well. Amazingly, the entire human body only has 639 muscles. But an elephant can actually lift 4.5% of its own weight with its trunk. So in the case of a bull, and a big bull like this would be around 300 kilograms. So short visit from 1 ton, but we'll take it. He seems to be wandering off now. Seem to be a few impala, just with their very white tails swishing about, chasing the flies away. So Catherine was saying, it's so great to see 1 ton. Would love to see him again in person one day. That would be wonderful. Catherine, I hope you get to do it. I wish I could too. So, and also just going back to the differences between the African and Asian elephants, the trunk of the African elephant actually has 2 prehensile grasping extensions at the tip, which is used as like a hand. And the Asian elephant only has 1 finger. So 1 as opposed to 2 like the African. And the Asian, they use it like a scoop as opposed to 2 fingers. You see these superb starlings being absolutely superb. Another little bird there. I'm not sure if it's something like a ground scraper thrush. No, it's not. Is it wattle starlings, maybe? Outside of breeding plumage, I think that's what it is. Ooh, that looked like a pin-tailed wide-eye. One with a very long little tail. All having a little bit of a bath, enjoying the water. Now that the elephants moved off, they're taking their gap. A couple of different species of starlings that we can see, and I can also hear a couple of different cisticulars as well. There's a croaking cisticular as well as a rattling cisticular calling. So in Victoria, saying that their coloration is quite impressive. Absolutely, Victoria, and hence the reason why they've called them superb starlings, because of this magnificent coloration that they have. The wattled starlings, not quite as beautiful, but when they do come into breeding plumage, they get these elaborate wattles, yellow wattles that come down from the throat region. It does make them a little bit more impressive, but that's only during the breeding season. So gone a little bit quiet now, but you never know what to expect here. Always animals that roll on through. So switching up of place, and we've gone from Old Donyo, and now we're back in South Africa, the KwaZulu-Natal province, and Tembe Elephant Park. Surprise, surprise, we've got some elephants. Also some zebra there. Yesterday we had a whole group of giraffe here as well, all bulls. They wanted to do a bit of necking, but they didn't really get deep into it. There was a number of bull elephants as well. So no giraffe today, but it looks like a small group of elephants, joined by some zebra there. Right, so it seems like there's elephants all round, so that's lovely, and I'm sure we're going to get to see lots more of them. But I think let's change of place and a little bit of biome as well. And let's head down to the tip of Africa and Stony Point. It's like we've got a Cape Cormorant. There's some kelp in the background just washing about. It's quite a big kelp forest not too far from here. There's that kelp forest I was speaking about. A couple of interesting things about this kelp that we see in the background there. It is a type of seaweed, and they only survive in cold water. So you won't find them in nice tropical waters, and that's why we find them down here on the Cape Coast and up the western Cape into Namibia and on that side of the country. Some can grow more than a foot a day. And they also grow along 20% of the world's coastline. They help to keep stormy waters calm, so it does sort of provide a buffer to the coastline when there's big swell. They don't have any roots, and they also use gas-filled air sacs to be able to float like that. And they obviously also provide a lovely haven for a lot of the marine life within these forests, helping to calm the currents within the water as well. So a bit of shelter for the life inside the water. So Ant's saying that that kelp looks like a creature of the deep. It does look like that, especially with the movements of the swell. It does give the impression of some kind of sea monster. And also manually drying out their feathers. With a lack of preen glands, that helps them to saturate their feathers, be able to dive in the water much easier so that they can catch fish. But it does mean that they've got to manually dry off their wings in the sun. That's a white-breasted cormorant, quite a bit bigger than the Cape cormorant. And what a beautiful view this is of Betty's Bay. You can see the cormorants and the seabirds using these rocks on a regular basis, with them being stained white like that. And this looks like a kelp gull. No, chased off by the cormorant. That's my spot. So Wild Bee was saying, loving the birds at the waterhole. I think it was those superb starlings and the wattled starlings at Oldonio. But I'm sure this is a lovely change as well with some of the marine birds. So, a nice question from Sugar Bits asking, does the kelp help reduce the CO2? So, yes, indeed it does, Sugar Bits. Because during photosynthesis, which I also go through, kelp absorbs sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water to produce sugar and oxygen. And absorption of carbon dioxide and production of oxygen is important for living things in reducing the amount of carbon dioxide in our oceans as well as in the atmosphere. So not only is it a refuge for thousands of different species of animals that live below the surface of the water, it also assists in the production of oxygen. So multifaceted. All right, so a little bit of picture break up there, just as we see one of the African penguins off in the distance. But I think it's time to change of place. Let's go back to Old Donyo. And Ants was saying kelp is like the spinach from the sea. Absolutely, Ants. And now that we've come back to Old Donyo, nice little bachelor herd of impala. All look in fantastic condition. Their coats are sheening in the sun. Won't be long and they'll be heading into the rutting season, so the friendliness might be short-lived. And speaking of the rut, it's every year as winter approaches and the days get shorter, nights get longer, and the air also becomes colder in the morning. You start to hear the guttural sounds of male impala rutting. The peak of the rut is normally between the full moons in May. This is when the female impala comes into season as well, and the male testosterone levels increase and are very high. Very good looking individual, this. Almost like he's posing for us. I think he might be having a bit of a snooze at the same time. Oh, there's a yellow baboon. He's hiding in the grass. I never noticed him there. Just trying to work out what this baboon is eating. Looks like something he's picking up from the ground. I wonder if it's these grass seeds or something similar. There's another individual there. So, Sugar Bits was asking, do the impala have oil glands that make their coats so shiny, or are they just very clean? It's a good question, Sugar Bits. So they don't really use a gland to make their coats shiny. However, they are fastidious groomers. They spend a large amount of time seeing to their personal hygiene, evident in their shiny coats. And for this exact job, they have modified teeth. The lower incisors are slightly loose in their socket and splay open to provide a comb as the teeth passes through the impala's coat. And so they successfully hook out dirt and parasites. And they also allogroom each other, so in a reciprocal manner. So in other words, one grooming the other, as well as them grooming themselves. And that means that they can get to hard to reach places, usually the head and neck regions, and then another individual will reciprocate by doing the exact same at the same places that they can't reach. And something that does add to this a little bit as well is that impala are the smallest antelope, in fact, that allow oxpeckers to ride along with them. Those birds act as grooming assistants, which remove the ticks and other parasites from the impala's pelage. During the rut, when the males are too busy to self-groom and too territorial to warrant allogrooming, they accumulate 6 times the parasite loads present on the herd females, and as a result have many more oxpeckers in attendance. So you'll see a lot more oxpeckers, especially on the males, during the rutting season. So Lorraine asking, what's the difference between olive baboons and yellow baboons, both found in Kenya? The last question, Lorraine, yes, they are both found in Kenya. The olive baboons, as the name suggests, they've got an olive coloration to them, and they're very hairy. They've got long hair, and they're much bigger than the yellow baboons, who are yellow, not quite as hairy, and obviously, but both of them do occur in Kenya. I think, though, the olive baboon's a little bit more concentrated a bit further north in Kenya, and the yellow baboon concentrated a little bit more in the south. But I think it's worthwhile going through all of the baboons nonetheless. But what are baboons, in fact? Because they're not, well, they're quite different to monkeys, but they are some of the world's largest monkeys, in fact. There's 5 species of the baboon: the olive, the yellow, the chacma, the guinea, and the sacred. And we get to see 3 of them. The chacma baboon, which is the only one that we have in southern Africa, and then the 2 that occur in Kenya, the olive and the yellow. But they're scattered across various habitats in Africa and Arabia. The olive baboon is the most extensively distributed of the baboon family, but the baboon, like other old world monkeys, does not have a prehensile or gripping tail, meaning that their tails are not used as a hand like you might see in vervet monkeys, but they're still able to climb when necessary. So they're a little bit more terrestrial. They have dog-like noses, powerful jaws, sharp canine teeth, and thick fur. Males have a longer mane around the neck called a ruff, and that's characteristics of all the baboons. The chacma baboon, not quite as hairy as the yellow and the olive. I've never seen the guinea or the sacred baboons. So those are 2 species that I've never seen before. And there was a bit of an alarm call here, but it could also be that these guys are coming into the rut. That's very often what they do. They try to throw each other off and then attack. Alarming again. Maybe there's a predator on its way for a drink. We can only hope. No, I don't know if it's that serious, although he's still looking off in that direction and alarming again. So off goes that impala. I'm pretty sure there's no predator imminently going to show itself. He's not concerned enough. You can just see the base now of Mount Kilimanjaro off in the background. The clouds hiding the peaks and the snow-capped peaks. We've only had 1 or 2 days where we've actually been able to see it. But it is there, hiding behind those clouds. Okay, so now that it's gone, oh, hello, I was almost going to say it's gone very quiet, but we were just about to move and change of place, but I think we'll stick around now that this elephant's arrived. So Sugar Bits saying, I love all the different butterflies. There are a lot of them flitting in and out here of all different colors. And Ants saying they keep the baboons out here so they won't steal any cars. Yeah, and if you've ever been to Cape Point, you'll understand that baboons are just about capable of stealing cars. They're capable of ripping off window wipers and wing mirrors. They can be quite a nuisance, especially when they lose their fear of humans. Drive Bunny says, one opened my son's car near Cape Town and got inside. I think the next step, Drive Bunny, is that they actually start learning to drive. Then we're in trouble. I've actually seen a video where there was a baboon sitting in a truck driver's seat with the window open, pretending like he was driving. It's absolutely incredible. And Ritz Paldora saying, hey, big boy. Yeah, this is a nice sized bull elephant. He's nothing like 1 ton, who was here earlier, but lovely individual nonetheless. And Tom Timone, one, saying, wow, he's enormous, especially from this perspective. Tom Timone, looking up at the elephant like this, almost at ground level, does give you a different perspective and show you how big they are, especially when you're not looking down on them, as some of the waterholes or cameras are put up on poles. So totally different perspective, and I really like this. I also like Cat Eye in the Greater Kruger, similar perspective to this. One of my trips up to Mana Pools in Zimbabwe when I was a young boy, and that campsite on the Zambezi River, it's not fenced and the animals can come through your campsite with the likes of elephants and lions and hyenas and all sorts coming through there, obviously at different times of the day and night. But in the mornings we used to have the baboons coming through, and we used to have to look after all of our stuff, from the vehicles to the tents and everything else. And we were told by the rangers there that the best way to stop the baboons making any nonsense was to actually leave the tents open, but pack everything away in your vehicle. And we had neighbors, but the campsites are sort of far apart. It's under all of these big trees. So our neighbors either didn't get the message from the rangers, or they decided not to listen to them. And they went off early on a game drive, and they shut up their tents with everything inside. And the baboons came, and we were still in camp, because I used to go fishing in the early morning and then come back as it warmed up for breakfast and then go back out again. And I watched this troop of baboons come through. We chased them out of our camp because we were there. But off they went to the neighbor's camp, which is about a couple of 100 meters away. And they then proceeded to use their tents as trampolines, jumping out of the tree onto the tents. And they were having an absolute ball. They completely flattened their tents. And this was, I ran up and tried to chase them away a couple of times. I did manage to chase them off. But as soon as I started walking away, they were back to the business. So they proceeded to rip the tents open, take everything out of it, including all the food that had been left, eat it, spread it all around, including all their sleeping gear as well, and completely decimate the tents. So when the people that had gone away for their game drive returned, they returned to an absolute mess. And I went on over to tell them that I tried my best, but the baboons were just having none of it. And I told them the advice that was given by the rangers. But, they were obviously enraged by the state of their campsite. So that's a little bit of a trick as well. If there are renowned baboon thugs, leave your tents open, because they'll rip it open just to see what's inside. And they literally will bite and rip your tent open. even if there's nothing in there. So best to leave it open with nothing inside, and so that they can go in and then they move off. So a head shake there. That's normally an indication that there's potentially another elephant making his way in. Not always. It's irritated with something. Or maybe he just wanted to practice his head shake. But he is giving them body language like there's another elephant around. All right, doesn't seem like there's another elephant making its way in, so I think it's time to change of place, and let's go back to South Africa and Tau. So nice question coming in from Trixie Rose saying, "Hi Ralph and Wild Earthlings, what is the baboon found on the Ethiopian highlands?" And this, according to my research, is the Galada, which is, it has been referred to by other names, including the Galada baboon, but in fact it's customarily placed in its own genus, which is the Ceropethesis. Though some genetic research suggests that this monkey should be grouped with its baboon kin, or the papio. But other researchers have classified the species even more distantly from the papio. While the Galada is the only living species of its genus, separate larger species are known from the fossil record. But it is quite a strange looking baboon that occurs on the Ethiopian highlands, called the Galada. So in Trixie Rose, that Galada that occurs on the Ethiopian highlands, they're sometimes called the bleeding heart monkey or the Galada baboon, but they're in a genus of their own, so very baboon-like. It's a species of old world monkey found only in the Ethiopian highlands, and they live at elevations of 1,800 to 4,400 meters above sea level. And it's the only living member of the genus Ceropethesis, a name derived from the Greek word for beast ape. Like its close relatives in the genus Papio, the baboons, it's largely terrestrial, spending much of its time foraging in the grasslands. The grass is comprising up to 90% of its diet. And I think I've seen a couple of documentaries on them, the BBC and National Geographic. There's a little warthog just zitting through there. Oh, here comes some more. A little family of them. Now, going further about those galadas that occur in the Ethiopian highlands, they are in fact the only primates that are primarily graminivores and grazers. So grass blades make up 90% of their diet, and they eat both the blades and the seeds of grasses. So when both blades and seeds are available, they will, though, prefer the seeds. They eat flowers, rhizomes, and roots when available, using their hands to dig for them. They consume herbs, small plants, fruits, creepers, bushes, and thistles. Insects can be eaten, but only rarely, and only if they can easily be obtained. So during the dry season, herbs are preferred over grasses, and they consume their food more like ungulates than primates, and they can chew their food as effectively as zebra. Very interesting, as we see this little family of Egyptian geese. Now, not so much grazing, a little bit of grooming. You can see the ones with not so much color on them, they're the immatures. You can see in the background there, I think it's zebra just moving. We can see its reflection on the water. And the red-billed teals moving through in the foreground. It's darkened up a little bit. I think there must be some clouds around. Who knows? Maybe there will be some rain here in Madikwe. So Sarah was asking, can water birds fly high? Sarah, some of them can, but not all of them. You know, the likes of the little moor hens and the red-knobbed coots, you don't ever see them sort of even flying away from the water. They might fly along river courses and so on, but they stay very close to the water and don't fly high ever. I never see them flying high. The likes of the ducks and geese, yes, they can fly pretty high. Not super high, but they can fly at a good level. Herons as well, storks, all of them can fly. They change of place, and they normally roost, sometimes different place from where they forage. So they can fly. So I would say that the true waterfowl and the ones that, forage around in the water, some of them can, but a lot of them don't even leave the waterhole itself. They're resident here, and they don't actually fly away. So those moor hens, the coots, they're permanently here. And the Egyptian geese also pretty much always here, but they have the ability to fly nice and high, and they can change of place completely if they like. And you'll find that once these juveniles get a little bit older, they will move off and go and look for mates of their own, leaving the adults to their own devices. And Lion Dog was asking, will the geese and ducks migrate, or are they permanent residents? Permanent residents, Lion Dog. These Egyptian geese and the red-billed teals, they don't migrate. They will remain as residents here unless the waterhole dries up or there's not enough food for them. Then they might change of place, but generally they'll just remain here if everything stays as is. You have the Natal spurfowl making a racket in the background. There we go. Another nice big elephant bull making his way in. Hello, buddy. Looks like he's had a fresh mud bath. A bit of dust thrown over the top as well. blue wildebeest is still hanging around, but now doing the important job of ruminating, chewing the cud and doing the whole digestive process. So, a question come in from Karen asking, are there animals apart from dung beetles that eat the dung from elephants and other herbivores? Well, the simple answer, Karen, is yes. You find actually a lot of animals that will eat dung, and particularly so the hind gut fermenters. Not so much the ruminants. You'll find that babies, they will eat their mother's dung to get the spores or the fungus that helps them with their digestion and all the microorganisms that assists with that. So babies, when they're born, they feed on their mother's dung on a regular basis, and then it does assist with their gut as well. Then, not really herbivores, but you see lots of animals that have, and particularly reptiles, that have a high calcium requirement for, especially tortoises. They will feed on the likes of carnivore scat, especially when it's full of bone fragments, and this helps to for their calcium requirement and the production of their shells. So I've often seen tortoises feeding on steaming leopard and lion scat. Absolutely disgusting, but from the reptile's perspective, it's quite important to get that calcium intake. So other than that, obviously lots of insects, but generally, the most that we do see is the babies eating their mother's dung, and that particularly with the hind gut fermenters. So zebra, warthogs, elephants, rhino, all of them, they will feed on their mother's dung. Okay, so time to change of place. Let's go back to the KwaZulu-Natal province and the Tembe Elephant Park. We've got another individual that's come in for a drink here. Looks like a bull. And going back to this question from Karen, animals that eat poop or dung or scat, whatever it is, feces, This is termed coprophagia. What is coprophagia? It's a fancy name for consuming feces, stool, or poop. And it's a natural phenomenon that takes place in the animal kingdom. Animals ranging from rabbits, dung beetles, and dogs as well have been observed practicing this seemingly absurd and outwardly revolting act. But it's very important that they do this. And we've also noticed that wild dogs will get into elephant dung as well, but they're generally after the dung beetles and the larvae that may be in there. So wild dogs are another one that I missed earlier that would also get stuck into some dung. There's a little old warthog just grazing on the opposite bank of this little waterhole. Looks like he's been for a dip as well. Lovely stance this from this elephant, with the one leg just resting up and the trunk over its tusk. So he's got a bit of a lump on his trunk there, and elephants do get herpes. So, and that's quite evident. I think this one has in fact got herpes. You see it. So it looks like he's had enough now, and he's sauntered off. The zebra, though, they haven't moved anywhere. Just enjoying a nice graze in the shade. So it looks like a couple of them maybe going to head down for a drink, leaving the other two to continue their grazing. And I often get asked why the zebra bob their heads like that when they walk. Now, horses will do this and donkeys do it as well. In the case of the zebra, especially in these wild areas, there is one of the reasons being the bot fly, which like to go up the nostrils of antelope, and particularly they do like zebra nostrils. They're nice and broad, and they've got nice nasal cavities for them to lay their eggs in. They also do this to wildebeest, both blue and black. So in one way, it's to help keep the flies out of their nose. But you know, when we include horses and donkeys, etc., it does help to maintain balance and rhythm as they're walking. So they sort of bob their head like that. It's the same like when you swing your arms backwards and forwards when you walk. So they don't have their arms to swing backwards and forwards, but they do have their head to nod up and down as they walk, and so it does keep that rhythm and balance, if you're wondering why they do that. Okay, so once again, nice time here at the Tembe Elephant Park with the elephants, or elephant, and the zebras. But let's change of place and let's head back to Old Daniel. Wow, these birds are nice and close here. That almost looked like a ground scraper thrush. No, that one I think is in fact that wattled starling. That yellow around the face really makes me think. Seem to have all flitted off now. They're coming in and out. So here's a lovely question coming from Gina asking, if elephants get herpes and buffalo get TB, what other illnesses do wild animals get that we humans can get too? And I found a lovely write-up by Siyabona Africa speaking on diseases shared by animals and humans. And I think it's a worthwhile read. Zoonosis is not a word that springs readily into the average person's mind, but one that is increasingly being discussed by wildlife vets and ecologists. A zoonosis is a disease that is shared by humans and animals, but is usually more common in animals. And anthropozoonosis is a disease that humans can give to animals. The SARS virus, which crossed from poultry to humans, is an example of a zoonosis that the entire world has become familiar with. How could we forget? The World Health Organization has estimated that about 75% of the new diseases that have affected humans over the last 10 years have come from animals or animal products. Anthropozoonosis are of special concern to people who work with great apes, especially chimpanzees. And diseases like measles and polio readily spread to primates and can cause huge fatalities. Countries involved in great ape conservation have considered a program that evaluates the health of any person that is due to work with the primates so as to prevent humans transmitting fatal diseases to these endangered animals. With a new conservation concept of integrating conservation areas with human settlements and also the concept of transfrontier parks, veterinarians are increasingly worried about how diseases will cross the wildlife-livestock interface. One disease of special concern is bovine tuberculosis, or TB, and this disease is found in the majority of buffalo herds in the Kruger National Park. And as the fences come down with the neighboring Limpopo National Park, the disease is likely to spread into Mozambique. The bacterium that causes TB can infect cattle, a species that introduced TB to buffalo originally. This has implications for meat exports, but also for human health. People infected with HIV/AIDS or in poor physical condition are more likely to catch ordinary TB. They can also contract the bovine form if they drink unpasteurized milk or have close contact with infected cattle. It's been estimated that there's about 20,000 people living in the Limpopo National Park currently, and they have cattle, goats, sheep, pigs, dogs, and cats. Several diseases have been identified for further monitoring, including brucellosis, foot and mouth disease, corridor disease, canine distemper, rabies, and African swine fever. Brucellosis is also caused by a bacterium and causes economic losses to livestock owners. To remove brucellosis from a herd of animals, infected individuals must be removed. It cannot be treated reliably with drugs in livestock. Humans infected with the disease get fever, chills, sweats, weakness, pains, and aches, which last 3 to 6 months and can be treated with antibiotics in the acute stage. Foot and mouth disease is a viral disease that is spread by inhaling or eating something contaminated with the virus. So livestock located next to the foot and mouth infected wildlife can be vaccinated against the disease, but usually still cannot be exported. Rabies can spread between carnivores, animals and dogs, which can then pose a threat to humans. Rabies is a viral disease and is usually spread through a bite. Canine distemper is a highly contagious viral disease that is fatal if left untreated. It affects domestic dogs, but in the Serengeti, where the Maasai people's dogs come into contact with wildlife, a strain of the disease has also been fatal to wild dogs, jackals, lions, leopards, and hyenas. Corridor disease or East Coast fever is a protozoan disease transmitted by tick bites. Fatalities are common, but dipping animals to remove ticks can decrease the incidence of the disease. And in order to address the issue of animal-human health, a memorandum of understanding has been signed by South African National Parks, the Peace Parks Foundation, and the University of Pretoria's Onderstepoort Veterinary Institute. The Hans Hoeijsen Research Facility near Open Gate in Kruger, now the International Center of Excellence in Biodiversity Research and Information, will spend the next 5 years promoting research into veterinary matters, including zoonosis. Although this originates from an initiative which was from the World Parks Congress, which happened in 2003. Animal Health for the Environment and Development have formed a special working group for the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier area. And the group, which contains role players from many wildlife and social fields, has had 5 working group meetings with the 6 scheduled. And the group has facilitated a lot of money and over several years addressing these disease issues and related training in and around the Limpopo National Park. So I think as we encroach on animal areas and wildlife areas, we're always going to, sort of bring livestock and domesticated animals into wild populations. So we're always going to have these transmissions. But there were the examples of those particular diseases: brucellosis, foot and mouth disease, corridor disease, canine distemper, rabies, and African swine fever, I think are the ones that are of most concern. I think this little bird that's come down here might be a little female cutthroat finch. And the little doves coming through, I think that's an ebble-spotted wood dove. You see it doesn't have to lift its head up. It's got a gullet, so it's actually able to suck and swallow. It doesn't need to lift its head up to throw the water down. Pigeons and doves, as well as the bustards, are able to do this. So slowly heading towards the end of the show, and as always, I've got to say thanks for everybody that have joined us, watching the African wildlife as they've been coming in for a drink. Every day is different. You never know what to expect. And of course, to the animals themselves for being the stars of the show, and the whole Wild Earth team for making it all happen. You guys rock. But don't forget that later on there will be the Sunset Safari, so lots of action coming your way, so don't go anywhere. Keep on watching Wild Earth. And I'll be back here again tomorrow, same time, same place. And we'll see what happens. Maybe tomorrow's the day that we get some predators coming down for a drink. That would be wonderful. I'm hoping and holding my fingers together for wild dogs. That's what is on my bucket list. See the butterflies flitting in and out here. I think there are a couple of swallowtails there. The emerald-spotted wood dove just scoots its way through. And of course, I think the highlight today was all these elephant bulls, and in particular, 1 ton we came to drink here at Old Donyo. Well, that's it from me for now, folks. Give it horns, bush greetings. Ciao for now.
Hello everyone, my name is Amy and this is On Safari. Well, hello everyone, I was a bit fast there.